Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Geek Warning from the Escape Collective. I'm James Huang. I'm here with Escape Collective technical editor Dave Rome in Sydney, Australia. Hi, Dave.
Hello.
And right next to me here at the Boulder Group Pedo Workshop in Boulder, Colorado is pro mechanic Zach Edwards. Hi, Zach.
Hello.
Ronan is still on paternity leave for just one more week, though. So we should have him back on the show for his triumphant return, hopefully, next week. So hopefully he's done, well, he's not done changing diapers, but hopefully he's had his fill of diapers for at least a little while anyway. So we have an excellent show today as always, including news of a new bike from Trek, some new wheels from Bontrager. I guess I could have said that we have new bike and wheels from Trek because Bontrager is part of Trek. Anyway, we also have an interesting new gravel tire from Maxxis. Supacaz is apparently expanding into yet another accessory category. And we'll do a bit of a deep dive into Columbus's new Trittico internal cable routing system. How's everyone doing this week? Dave, you still look a little sleepy.
I mean, it's 7 a.m. here, and I'm not a morning person. So yes, I'm a little sleepy, but it's all good. It's all good. I'm happy to be here. Yes.
Cool. Zach, we just finished up a long holiday weekend here in the U.S. How was your Labor Day?
Yeah, it was good.
I actually rode by your house the other day. I was up in Ned riding.
Nice.
I rode by on Saturday morning. I guess you were probably here, though.
No, I was riding as well.
Oh. I kind of wonder if I saw you, because were you maybe coming back into town at like 9:30, 10-ish,
Something like that, yeah.
Were you on a hardtail or like a super caliber or something?
Yes, super cal.
I think that was you.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Were you coming back from like the high school area?
Yep.
Okay, that was definitely
me.
Question.
How about that?
Zach, did you see James?
I don't know that I saw James.
I actually yelled out Zach.
Okay.
And I
feel like it was
did he look fast?
A holiday weekend, and there's so many people out.
There were a lot of people.
Eventually, you kind of just like stop trying to like make out who everyone is across the other side of the road.
I prefer to think that Zach did actually know that it was me calling him out or calling his name, and he just ignored me.
Yeah,
that's also possible.
I was just going to ask if you thought each other looked fast, but if Zach didn't see you, James, then it doesn't work.
Well, I was
too fast to see.
I was going uphill, so I definitely was not going fast.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
Dave, spring is coming for you, isn't it?
Yep. It started a few days ago. Rudely, first day of spring, I left the house early morning for a ride. I'm like, it's spring now. I don't need gloves or knee warmers, and I was far too optimistic.
It's never fun.
Yeah, it was partly because I just come from the United States where it was super hot, and I thought that internal body warmth that I'd suffered through for 3 weeks would carry me through the cold of being back in a winter climate, but it did not.
Oh, and it wasn't even all that hot in Portland either, but it gets plenty hot in Sydney. You'll have your fill, I'm sure.
Oh, yes. Very much so.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's go ahead and just dive straight into the news today, shall we? First up is this new bike from Trek. Dave, you've got the whole skinny on this thing. What do we have here?
Yeah, so it's I believe it's actually Trek's best-selling drop bar model, which is the Domane AL. And I reviewed one of these a few years ago when they last updated it just prior to COVID. And I was blown away by how versatile this bike is. So it's their entry-level, most basic road bike, low level and aluminium platform. It was disc brake last time. It's now disc brake only, even more so. And yeah, it's just a really versatile platform. So they've got a really great endurance style geometry, which is a super approachable geometry. Nice tall stack, short reach on it. But the previous version was very generous with its tire clearance. It could fit about a 38 mil, and this new one can now fit a 40, which is pretty wild for an entry-level road bike.
I'm surprised they don't just call it like a gravel bike.
Yeah.
It's like gravel light.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, if you like your marketing terms, it's definitely an all-road bike. It comes with 32 mil tires, but yeah, it sort of seems, assuming the gearing is acceptable for where you live and you don't mind a bit of toe overlap, then yeah, there's nothing really stopping you from doing gravel on this bike.
If I understand correctly, this is also lighter than the previous version. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, I mean, being an entry-level bike, the previous version was not light. The Tiagra version I reviewed, I think, was about 10.4 kilograms without pedals. This new one, it claims to be about 220, 250 grams lighter for the frame and fork. So yeah, you'll be at about 10.2 kilograms for a Tiagra bike now, which is still not light, but most bikes at this price point aren't anymore.
You said something about versatility, so I'm assuming that theme kind of carries forward here with mounts and that sort of thing. What do we have here?
For sure. So yeah, so there's rack and fender mounts. There's a little bento box mount on the top tube. But yeah, you can sort of use it as a commuter if you want. You can use it for carrying stuff. It's seems pretty capable. That in that element, that's not new. They've done that previously on the Domane AL, but it's good to see them continuing that.
If I understand correctly, this is Trek's first road bike with UDH too, right?
Yeah, so that's interesting because when Trek rolls out a new feature like that, they tend to keep rolling it out until every bike in their range has it. So yeah, this is their first drop bar bike to go to the Universal Derailleur hanger, and dare I say it won't be the last. Certainly Trek, for me, it's really interesting because Trek have had a pretty long-standing relationship with SRAM. So if you think way back to like Boost, Trek were the first to do that with SRAM. So there, they sort of are pretty early movers when it comes to adopting tech on the SRAM side of things, and I think this is probably another sign of that they're perhaps the first major manufacturer to put it on a road bike, and I suspect we'll see more of it.
Zach, I'm kind of curious to hear your take on this a little bit. From a visual standpoint, I know some people have objections to UDH, particularly on metal bikes, just because it's kind of bulky. But from a functional standpoint, I mean, can you think of any downsides to a bike running UDH?
Not really. I mean, I know like one of the arguments is it pushes the rear end out a little bit wider. So potentially if you have like really big feet or something, then you could get some heel rub on the chainstays. But besides that, like functionally, it's great and works really well. And then it's future proof for whatever drivetrains are in the works.
And have you had a pretty good time actually getting hold of replacement ones when you need them?
There was definitely a bit of time where they weren't really available, which was annoying.
So like a maybe universal but not so available derailleur hanger?
I mean, there are also like third-party companies that make them in the same shape.
Right.
But yeah, for the most part, I don't see why you wouldn't, if you're coming out with a new bike, why you wouldn't go this route.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too.
Yeah, I think there are some chainline considerations, especially as chainstay lengths get shorter, which perhaps need to be addressed, or perhaps the industry knows what the new chainline might be for the drop bar version of a transmission. But yeah, I mean, certainly that, currently it's 55 millimeters for the mountain bike transmission, and that doesn't work so well on such a short chainstay, but that's probably the big question that we're yet to answer. But otherwise, it seems like a cool thing. And yeah, just to be clear, it is UDH. It's the exact same rear derailleur hanger as the mountain bikes.
Hence the term universal.
Yeah.
Dave, what about cable routing? What has Trek done here? Have they kept it the same, or have they changed it? What does it
they've
look like
messed it up, James. They've messed it up.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean they've cleaned it up, but in turn they've messed it up. So yeah, it's now through the headset, which, to be clear, I don't mind on bikes that are hydraulic disc braked with wireless shifting. I'm quite okay with a lot of systems there. But this is an entry-level road bike that's still running mechanical shifting. And I don't like that. I don't think it's necessary. It's an aesthetic thing, and I'm sure Trek have figured out that they're going to sell more bikes because of it, but unfortunately, the people buying these bikes are going to have bigger service bills over the lifetime of that bike as a result of this decision.
All right, Zach, I've got a shop-related question for you here. So the entry-level Domane AL is $1,200 US, comes with Shimano Claris, and mechanical shifting, everything runs through the headset. Let's say someone needs a headset service. They're riding in the rain. Let's say they live in the UK, they live up in the Pacific Northwest, whatever. That bike at $1,200, if someone needed to have their headset replaced, what sort of bill are they looking for?
I mean, that's the thing I think with, like Dave saying he's okay with it on or hydraulic with electronic drivetrains, right? Is like the labor is the same whether the bike is $15,000 or $1,200. Like it takes the same amount of time to pull it apart, arguably more time because it has shift cables as well. So I think like, I don't know. And it's probably cheaper headset bearings that are going to wear out faster. And I think like in the long run, if someone is actually riding this bike, then it is going to cost a lot more to keep serviced and maintained and everything than what like the same bike with externally routed cables would be, which I think is kind of, I don't know, kind of shitty that that's like the way the industry is going, that we're more concerned with aesthetics than keeping this customer happy long term.
Well, because in terms of how much time and labor we're looking at just for that sort of thing, it's, I mean, easily a couple $100, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on like, a lot of times you're like, let's say you're pulling that bike because the headset needs service, then at that point it's like, okay, it's already all coming apart. So we might as well replace the shift cables and housing and everything while we're in there, rather than like you having to come back in 2 months because then the shift cables also need replaced. So yeah, it's kind of like once it's open, then you might as well tear into it more. I mean, the positive on like a bike like this, it doesn't have an arrow handlebar that has all the things routed through the bar and then through the stem. It just is like a normal bar and then pops into the headset cap, which is a little bit easier to service, but still like, and then you need new bar tape and it's just, yeah. It's just kind of annoying. Like if you're spending $1,200 on a bike, this isn't the kind of like repair bill that you want to have to deal with.
No. And like I've seen arguments about this thing like, oh, well, how often do you have to replace a headset bearing? And true, in the past, you didn't have to replace it so often, but now there's gaping holes leading to the headset bearing for the cables. So you're going to have to replace that headset bearing more than you ever did in the past. So yeah, it's, I don't know. It's the way things are going and it looks cool. People will buy it, but I just, the thing here is we need to raise awareness, and it's up to shops to, if they've got an alternative option to this bike, to point out that one is probably going to cost more to service in 2 or 3 years' time.
Well, and it's a bummer for shops too, because obviously they want to sell more of these bikes because they are in the business of staying in business, right? Mm-hmm. And particularly if it's like kind of a modern generation Trek shop where they mostly have Trek bikes, they might not have another option at that price point to show someone. So it's not really in their interest to tell the customer, hey, this is a $1,200 bike. It's got this and that and whatever. Oh, by the way, as soon as you need a headset service, you're looking at another $200 or $300 in labor.
Yeah. And especially with Trek's business model, right? Where they basically own all their, well, not all, but they own a huge number of their bike shops these days. So those shops are not going to mention a competitor product. So yeah, hopefully this message can get out in front of the consumers buying this bike, and I'll have one of these bikes to review soon, and that's certainly something that I'll be mentioning in the review, despite the fact that, given past experience with this model, I'm sure otherwise it'll be a great bike.
Yeah, right. And it's just like unfortunate. I think that that's kind of the way that it's all going, whether you want it or not, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm sure specialized entry-level bike is going to go this way, and so is every other.
They just updated that, and it didn't.
Oh,
so we're good for another 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Well, I mean, unfortunately, it really does feel like kind of beating a dead horse on our end, because I think we've talked about our feelings on internal cable riding quite a bit here, and
but it's one that we just keep getting new horses on, and we'll just
yes, the fresh horses keep coming in anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Also new from Trek today, from their Bontrager component and wheel range, Bontrager is getting into thermoplastic wheels. So I think we've mentioned before that the vast majority of carbon fiber bike wheels that are out on the market are thermoset carbon fiber, which is just kind of traditionally the way that's all been done. It's basically a carbon fibers cured in an epoxy that is permanently cured, so you can't really do anything about that. Thermoplastic, you can kind of heat it up and kind of redo stuff with it, so you can kind of chop it up and melt it and reuse it again, sort of. So we have from Bontrager a new Airless Pro 37V and 49V all-road and gravel wheel sets. So to be clear, both wheel sets are intended for both all-road and gravel. Bontrager is calling this material OCLV Next, which is a, quote, smoother, stronger, greener, and better carbon wheel, unquote. They're pretty reasonably light, definitely wide for sure. The 37V is 25 mil internal, 31 mil external, 37 mil deep. Claim weight's 1,465 grams, not too bad. The 49 mil deep one is also 25 mil internal, 33 mil external, claim weight of 1,555. They're both hooked, which is interesting. Tubeless, of course. Other common features, they use Bontrager's own Rapid Drive 108 road rear hubs, I guess front and rear hubs, DT Swiss Aerolite bladed spokes. Yeah, kind of interesting. They're aero optimized for 28C tires, but very much intended for road and gravel. Yeah, curious. Zach.
I've been riding these wheels for the past few months.
Oh my God, but they just came out today. How is that possible?
Right. And they're pretty sweet. Like they're light and they're plenty stiff and they like aren't overly harsh, I would say. Like they're not like mega stiff, beat you up type of deep wheel. I've been riding them off-road and gravel tires, like 38 mil, and smashing them into rocks and haven't broken them. So all pretty sweet.
Yeah, they're not terribly priced either. They're $1,700 US for the pair, which seems pretty competitive these days. It also comes with Bontrager's lifetime warranty, so that's pretty good too. And yeah, I mean, I think the ride quality is very similar to other thermoplastic wheels that I've ridden. Maybe like a very, very slight decrease in vibration, but it definitely does seem softer when you're like really hitting stuff. What is particularly interesting, I think, about these Bontrager wheels is that, like, as far as I know, every other thermoplastic carbon bike wheel that's out on the market right now, these are actually manufactured for Trek or Bontrager by CSS Composites out in Utah. Bontrager's own design, I'm sure, but it is a CSS Composites rim. So the other competing wheels that are out on the market in that category at the moment, Chris King has that ARD 44. I know CSS obviously has its own brand for Forge and Bond for at least a gravel wheel anyway. But I suspect that this is just going to be the start of a thermoplastic wave for gravel too.
Question on that. If CSS is making everyone's rims, what are they doing to differentiate them?
That is a good question, Dave. I've asked them this before, actually. And CSS is super, super tight-lipped about their process because it's apparently very highly automated, has pretty minimal manual labor. One of the really big things, like kind of big appeals about it is that the process also has very little waste because it's so automated and robotic. And like one of the things that Bontrager talks about is that there's no deburring required, there's no sanding required after the thing comes out of the mold. So, they're saying it's like up to a 95% decrease in volatile organic compounds, so VOCs. Workers don't really have to deal with carbon dust, that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, since CSS has their own proprietary process, which they kind of have their own layup to a certain extent. I'm not really sure exactly how much differentiation there can be aside from shape.
Yeah.
It's
probably
really
like shape
though.
Versus and then like strength and weight, right? You can specify that. Like if you're Bontrager going to them being like, we want it to be X durable and roughly in this weight ballpark.
Yeah, for sure. But it does seem like it's becoming more of a commodity item. It's almost like I guess realistically, it's not all that different from what we see in the automotive space because, you might have a car that says Ford on it, but, that car and a Honda might have the same internal components from, that are shared from some third-party supplier. So it's not entirely unusual. I think in this case, it's just a little bit unusual that we know pretty easily who's making the stuff.
Yeah.
But either way, I mean, it does seem like it should be a pretty good wheel overall. I mean, I don't see too many downsides to it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Zach?
I think it'd be previously the wheels that they made are the Chris King ones, their own, and then Revel wheels. And I feel like those are all relatively small companies. So I think it'll be interesting, how much more volume and how many more thermoplastic wheels are out on the market because it's Trek, right? Like they're going to have so much more reach and just going to come stock on 1 million bikes and whatnot. So it'll be kind of interesting. Can they keep up? Or if they have to really ramp up their production facilities in order to keep that meet that demand.
I mean, I would have to guess that Trek is probably pretty good at forecasting at this point. At least better than most, I think. And I would also have to think that Trek wouldn't have entered into this sort of arrangement without some sort of reassurances that CSS could keep up with whatever they expected the volumes would be.
Yeah. Are we 100% sure it is CSS making these rims?
Yes. Bontrager did confirm with me that they are made by CSS.
Do we know where the wheels are being assembled?
There is being assembled in the US.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh, good on
them. So
okay.
CSS is making the rims for Bontrager in Utah.
Yeah.
And then they are being shipped to Waterloo for assembly.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's good to know they're not being shipped back and forth around the world then.
No, that's actually one of the things that Bontrager talked about in terms of being a greener wheel. So in addition to there being less waste product associated with making the rim itself, there is less transportation involved, at least getting it to the home warehouse and assembling, that sort of thing. So I think that all seems like good things to me. I mean, they're maybe not as light as they could be if they were thermoset.
Yeah.
But for that sort of wheel, I'm not sure that customer is super, super weight conscious anyway.
Yeah. My only thoughts on this is that Bontrager Trek, they've actually been really progressive, I'd say. They've probably been the market leader as far as bringing carbon wheels to the masses down to an attainable price point. So if you think about like their what was it? What's their mountain bike wheel called? The something Pro.
Line ProV.
Yeah, the Line Pro. That trail wheel.
Wheels.
That was like one of the first carbon mountain bike wheels to really drop the price point down to like a pretty low level while giving like a really, really good warranty. Like they pushed pretty much all of their competitors to drop prices and to improve warranty. So yeah, the state of play at the moment in carbon wheels is because Trek forced that market. And I think this is quite an interesting move because if they're doing thermoplastic at $1,700, $1,800.
I think it's $1,800. Excuse me.
Yeah, $1,800 for a pair with a really good warranty. It's almost. I just don't know where the more premium brands sit amongst this now because if they're using the same technology with the same rim and the only differentiation they have is in the hub, it kind of sets this price limit for CSS moving forward. It's interesting. Like Flash and Bond, I think their wheels with an entry level i9 hub are about $2,200, which is not a huge difference, but I just think it's interesting if Trek are pushing this price point down, it'll be interesting to see where like the likes of Chris King and Revel and etc. can sell these wheels in future.
Well, yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, Dave, because I actually did talk to. So I have a set of those Chris King wheels that I need to finish up the review on, actually. And I actually did talk to Chris King, the company, not the man, but I talked to them about kind of how they felt about them having a wheel that is, having a rim that's not only made by a third party, but also having that third party who have their own brand. That's sort of in direct competition in a way with the wheels that they're making for Chris King. And then now we have another CSS rim that is being marketed under the Bontrager brand that is also in some ways kind of going to be cross-shopped against that Chris King. I mean, the hubs are obviously different for some people if they're going to want a more premium hub or like a colored hub or something like that. They're going to get a Chris King.
Yeah.
Because that option is there, whereas that's not there with Bontrager. All those hubs are just black. But still, I mean, it's going to be harder and harder to differentiate between a lot of these wheels moving forward, I think. So it is going to be a question of, like you said, warranties and stuff like that.
I mean, I think a lot of it, though, is it's just like a different customer base. Like the person that wants Chris King or an Envy or whatever other expensive wheel are like seeking out aftermarket wheels to make their bike unique. Where a Bontrager wheel is more of this comes stock on a Trek, and if you own a Trek, this is a easy upgrade to get from the same bike shop that you got your bike from. So I think it's just it's more mass appeal.
Yeah, I mean, I run Bontrager mountain bike wheels on my Ibis, and a Pinarello shop that I worked at, which was a Trek dealer, used to spec most of its Pinarello dogmas with Bontrager wheels just because they were exceptionally good.
I mean, mine, I've got these wheels on a Specialized, right? And I have no problem with that, but there are a lot of people out there that are very
I agree,
particular.
Yeah. But anyway, it's interesting. I mean, good on Trek for making this move, but it will be interesting to see what it does to the broader strategy of others using these rims.
We will find out. And I think it's worth noting too that actually, Zach, looking at your bike right in front of me, I will say I didn't even realize you had those wheels on there because of the way that Bontrager has done those logos on there.
It's
They're
very
black
low
on,
key.
They're black on black.
Yeah, it's like kind of like a gloss logo on a matte rim.
Yeah, but like barely gloss almost.
Yeah, and it's
like,
dusty, so it's even harder to see.
Yeah,
but
yeah. So like it's just some black carbon fiber wheel. Who
Yeah.
knew?
Yep.
It's a shame they don't have like glaring white logos painted across them.
I'm sure you can get those as stickers.
Optional.
Mm.
Optional upgrade.
Yeah. I mean, such graphics are quite a proven tactic.
Yeah, true. Well, I actually have a set of these wheels in for review as well. So yeah, I guess maybe I'll tap Zach for his experience on these as I wrap these up. So we'll hear more from us soon on that. So stay tuned. All right. Well, moving on from Bontrager, and speaking of gravel, we have some new tires from Maxxis, the Reaver. I actually don't know what a Reaver is. Dave, do you?
It's Google.
I hadn't got that far.
All right. Well, while Zach is looking at what a Reaver is, what are we looking at?
So
with
the
this
first thing that comes up is one who reaves.
Oh,
A
that's very
border
helpful.
raider or cattle thief.
Hmm.
It's also a video game, apparently.
I'm guessing it's probably not named after the video game.
No.
All right. All right,
Cattle thief. We'll go with that.
Okay. Maybe also a play on their Beaver tire.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, what is the Reaver, the tire, Dave?
It's a new race gravel tire. So it is basically pitched as a faster, racier version of the Rambler, which is one of my favorite gravel tires. But so this is a bit more of a semi-slick center tread with knobs on the side, and it's pitched to be lighter, faster rolling, and more durable than that Rambler. And it's seen some race use already in the recent months, and now it's available.
I think just to one thing to really note about this tire is it does have that super fine center tread that's actually pretty wide as far as how wide the semi-slick section is. But the side knobs are actually pretty pronounced on that. So was it the Receptor, I think, from Maxxis that is kind of semi-slick all across the whole thing?
Yeah.
So I think this is almost sort of similar to the Receptor in like the middle 3/4 of the tread almost, but like the outer bit, like they're a real shoulder knob. So, when you lay that thing over in a corner, it actually seems like it might bite.
See, I don't like that though. Like, cause you almost never ride your gravel bike just on dirt.
True.
Like, and you're cornering on pavement and you roll the bike over as you go around the corner. And then those like shoulder knobs just kind of fold out from under you. And it feels super squirmy. So I have not ridden this tire, but like usually tires with similar like large shoulder knobs on pavement are not good.
It'd be interesting. Dare I say, I think Maxxis probably have tested that case scenario and probably have designed the shoulder knob to not squirm or fold in that way. But
well, either way, I mean, it's not really.
Like that said, I do love a file tread. Which is basically what this is, just a big cyclocross tire.
So I mean, none of us have tried this tire yet, but it certainly, at least based on my experience with the Receptor, again, which is somewhat similar center tread at least, I would definitely expect this Reaver to be pretty wicked fast, at least in a straight line.
I'm getting real Richie Betamax vibes from it.
Oh no, it's like the old Maxxis, the Oriflamme. Like they just need to bring that back. Like they have the new Aspen ST that isn't actually for sale.
Yeah,
which is the mountain bike version, and this is seemingly the gravel version of that.
Yeah, that's fair.
But
so it's available in tan and black sidewalls, and only tubeless, of course. Why would you want anything else? And yes, it's 700 only in 40 or 45 mil width.
Yep. Looks pretty good. I'd like to try some at some point. Next up on news, this is kind of interesting, and this isn't necessarily news so much as it is maybe a little bit of speculation, I guess. So I think a lot of people listening to the show will be familiar with the Supacaz brand. I'm actually looking at some Supacaz bar tape and plugs on Zach's bike here. And Dave, maybe why don't you tell us what you saw here, because they had a interesting little pseudo reveal on Instagram the other day.
Yeah, they posted on Instagram a call out for influencers and athletes to work with them on launching eyewear in 2024, which is not a very quiet place to announce such a thing. Dare I say it was incredibly intentional. But yeah, for me, it's interesting that, I mean, it's just an interesting category for Supacaz to get into from my point of view. And I mean, obviously they think there's money to be had, which is why they're getting into the category. But we've also seen a lot of other entrants into the eyewear category. And I guess, yeah, I wanted to bring this up to pose the question, which is, how do you think the other entrants like Skicon and others have gone? And do you think they're profitable?
Well, I mean, I guess the question is, how profitable do you really need to be? Because, I mean, eyewear, well, I guess one consistent thing I see in Supacaz's product range, and it's pretty broad. They've got just kind of stuff all over the place, but I feel like most of the items that they have, it's almost like they specialize in very, very high profit, in very, very high profit margin component or accessory ranges.
That's a fair comment. Yeah.
So I feel like this is kind of fitting for them, and Supacaz almost being kind of more of a fashion/style brand. I feel like eyewear is almost like a natural progression for them because it's very much a fashion and style item. And it is something that has a kind of like a notoriously high profit margin in terms of how much it costs to produce versus what they typically sell for.
Yeah.
I mean, my guess, just given the Supacaz brand, is that these are probably not going to be super low key in terms of styling.
Nope.
I mean, if I were them, I mean, I guess as far as competing brands, I would say the ones that would be maybe real interested to see what happens here would be brands like 100% or like Coup or
what's the Enduro bro brand?
Pit Viper.
Pit Viper. There you go.
Pit Viper.
I could imagine there being Pit Viper vibes in this product range.
Yeah. I feel like their whole range of products, not just eyewear, is just very strange.
I mean, it is kind of strange, but that being said, they do make good bar tape.
Yeah, I like the bar tape. The rest of it's all weird though. And then at the bar tape, it's like, okay, are you aftermarket like your own company? But then it's also OE spec on a lot of Specialized bikes. And it's like, are you also just Specialized?
Well, so Dave, do you want to reveal the secret here?
Huge secret.
The founder's son owns Mike Sinyard. His son is the owner of Supacaz. So Mike Sinyard is the founder of Specialized, and I actually am blanking on what the son's name is. I'm sorry, James. Do you know who the founder of Supacaz is?
I don't remember what his name is.
I don't remember his name.
But it's also like that's funny to me too because like Specialized tried eyewear and failed with it. So then they're like, let's try again.
Well, but it's almost like it wasn't worth it for them though, because
Anthony Sinyard.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the Specialized eyewear, I actually thought was pretty good.
Yeah, it was good
back
stuff.
then.
But like, so was Giro's and every other company that came out with eyewear and failed.
But these are really big companies, and I just wonder if a segment has to be of a certain size, like a certain market share, for them to be interested, for it to be worthwhile, for it to not be sort of like a drag on the brand necessarily. Whereas a company like Supacaz, they can afford in a lot of ways to branch out into another niche like this and not have it be like a huge splash. And they can probably just have it be just some sort of small segment of their portfolio and then be perfectly okay with it. Because again, like what we were talking here is like, what does Supacaz do? Like, what's their primary thing? I don't know. Bar tape, I guess. Bottle cages.
Yeah, bright colors.
Yeah. It's a funny category to me because it's like that call out, like we're looking for influencers and we're looking for pro teams. It's so the eyewear category. It's like I can't think of any other product category that gives away more product. It's very and that comes back to it being just super high margin, right? Like there is a lot of margin in eyewear. But yeah, you look historically at like Oakley, and you used to have Oakley at pro mountain bike races just with like bags and bags of eyewear for each race. There's a lot of product turnover in there.
It's just that sort of thing is just hilarious to me because if you look at in terms of marketing, companies that just do an awful lot of marketing, giveaway, and stuff like that, and companies that seem to have an awful lot of cash to throw around. Like if you look at Red Bull, for example, there's also apparently an awful lot of money to be made or profit margin in energy drinks because each one of those cans sells for what? I don't know, $3, $4, or $5 or whatever. I can't remember now.
No idea. Don't purchase Red Bull.
And I know it doesn't cost that much to make. The can might even cost more than the liquid that's inside of it. And we look at what the Red Bull brand is associated with now, which is basically everything in action sports, and they seem to be doing just fine.
So is eyewear the energy drink of cycling?
Could be. I mean,
the energy drink is the energy drink of cycling because they sponsor a lot of cycling. But I don't know. I'm kind of amused by how many new entrants we see into the eyewear space, and I question how many are actually making it work.
Right. That'll be the interesting thing. Like, how long do they have sunglasses listed on their website for sale?
I mean, we'll find out soon enough, right? I mean, 2024 is not that far away, really. And how much, when you have such a low per cost, like per item cost, like eyewear has. I mean, how long does it take to pay for those molds and pay for whatever design and development work you have to do?
Yeah. Anyway,
we'll see.
Yeah,
we will see. So anyway, if you are an influencer, and you're interested in maybe picking up some Supacaz stuff, I guess reach out to Supacaz and see what they have to say.
They said no DMs. Don't DM them. You got to email. Be a professional about it.
Okay, I'm going to DM them. I'm an influencer. I can be? Sure. Why not?
Like you said, you had to have more than 25,000 followers.
I do.
You do?
I do.
Somehow.
I have no idea how.
James had some reels go real viral.
I had 2 reels from Eurobike that went nuts.
Yeah.
They're like the views are totally are in the well into the millions at this point.
It's absurd.
And
people really like their hub cutaways.
The hub cutaways, and they apparently and I would say a lot of people have well, at least certainly maybe my crowd, I guess. A lot of people maybe aren't super familiar with high pivot mountain bikes. So anyway,
how much hate did you get on your personal Instagram page for posting that Lowell Bikes reel? Was there a lot of confusion? A lot of people angry about a complicated looking bike they didn't understand?
Looking at the comments for that, and there definitely are a lot of comments still that pop up on that. There are a lot of people who for sure don't really actually know what it is. There are a lot of people who are for sure throwing up their hands and just being like, this is the most terrible thing ever, kill it with fire, so on and so forth. And then the people who know what it is, they're kind of like, well, it's not really all that different than what's already out there. Like there's actually not that many more moving pieces than what you would have in any other high pivot bike. So those people are kind of more like, I'm actually really curious to try it.
Okay. Anyway.
So I think I'm more in the latter camp. So
yeah, fair enough. Well, there you go. James the influencer.
Yeah. Look at me. Big money. All right. Last bit of news here. Dave, this one's actually also on you. This was something that you just wrote an article about on Escape Collective about the new internal routing components from Columbus that is kind of specifically aimed at smaller custom builders, actually.
Yeah, Trittico.
What is this?
Trittico. It's a new product family from them. And Columbus have been doing carbon forks for a while. Admittedly not Italian-made, rather using various contract manufacturers in Asia. But they've expanded on that lineup to have an integrated cabling solution, which, as you said, is specifically designed for their hand-built custom frame business partners. Really those using their tubing.
So one thing to really note for this is whereas most brands that are using fully internal routing with lines that go through the headset, that upper headset assembly is typically oversized to make room to have everything pass through. Columbus has designed their system so that it runs through a standard internet bearing up top. And the way that they're doing that is they have sort of like 2 channels that are molded into the steer tube, just a regular internet tapered steer tube. And then, they have their own headset. They have their own stem design. There is some pretty neat design, I guess, some engineering that's incorporated into this setup. We actually, of course, consulted with Raul Lucia, who he said that he didn't really see too much alarming as far as the stereo tube design, which is good to hear. But one thing that's kind of neat with the stem design is it has a configurable shim that's between the stem and the stereo tube that lets you adjust the angle, actually kind of a fair bit, which is nice in the sense that it gives you a little bit extra height adjustment without having to deal with, without having to worry about whether or not you have enough slack in the hydraulic lines.
Yeah, so the stem has two optional inserts. You can either have one that's either keeps the stem length the same, or you flip it and it adds 5 millimeters to the stem length, or you can swap out that shim and then you can have that angle adjust, which adds an additional -5 degree angle onto the already -8 degree angled stem. So yeah, it just gives it a bit more dump. But you can't run them both. You pick one or the other.
It looks suspiciously like Envy's original Aero stem.
Yeah, I'm sure there's
are some similarities for sure.
Plenty of inspiration happening with this design. Like, they're not the first to put internal cabling through a 1 1/8 headset either. Like BMC and Cervelo and a few other brands, Factor, have done this already. It's just, I'd say, looking at it, I think Columbus have really done their research in the shape and how much material they've put into the stereo. It looks pretty generous.
Yeah, and it's also worth mentioning that with that whole angle adjustable shim, I mean, Specialized did that ages ago on tons and tons and tons of bikes. So that in and of itself is not a new feature.
No.
So the stem is carbon fiber. One thing that I did see some people commenting on in the article that you wrote is that some people are finding it a little bit odd that this is something that is aimed at smaller custom builders to a large extent, many of whom were going to be working in metal, so titanium, steel, aluminum, whatever. And yet this stem kind of has a little bit of a different design language or shape than what you would typically see in a lot of those tubular bikes. So that's maybe the only miss that I see, because like the first time I saw it at the Made Show was on one of the frames from that Taiwanese builder, Ioclin. And the frame was absolutely beautiful. The whole execution was super clean, tidy. But then that stem was kind of like slightly curved, and then it was a little bit of a weird contrast with all the straight, smaller diameter tubes.
Yeah, it's kind of even got like a bit of like a quill stem style, like a old campy quill stem style to it. It's I can kind of see it working on some bikes and definitely not on others. I think what's really interesting is that this the fork design lets you use any 1 1/8 stem. Any standard stem will actually bolt to the fork. It's just Columbus couldn't really guarantee whether whatever stem you use has enough angle or room for you to then route the hoses out of that stem. So they can't guarantee that, but they can say, you can bolt any stem to it. It's just then a matter of the builder figuring out if the hoses will fit. So I'm sure builders will figure out other stems that they can use, other handlebars that they can use with the system. And it's just a matter of if you can feed those hoses smoothly onto the steerer, then it's good to go. The other element that's really interesting is Columbus aren't actually speccing any headset with this. It's, again, that is up to the builder.
I guess with the stems, are they planning on offering like an aluminum stem for different price points and different aesthetics? Or
nothing yet. I mean, it's possible something might come in future, especially if enough builders say we don't like the stem, we don't like the aesthetics of it. But yeah, nothing at the moment. I mean, the product range is pretty limited at this time.
Gotcha.
But I mean, this is something that was essentially just announced, and I'd have to imagine that Columbus has the resources to expand on this range if it's received well. And I think overall it has been received pretty well. I would have to think that if I were a smaller builder, it would be nice to have a pretty much turnkey system available that lets me use that smaller diameter upper headset. So I mean, as far as I can tell anyway, I feel like this is something that is going to expand moving forward. That'd be my guess anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Columbus, they mentioned to me that they wanted something. They had demanded from their builders to create a fork system that worked better than pre-existing options. There was a lot of builders out there that kind of want to offer internal cabling to their customers, but don't like the 1.5 inch headset bearing that was required with a lot of, say FSA system or similar, where yeah, those systems using a round steerer tube and therefore need an oversized bearing. They don't like the aesthetic of that. So Columbus was basically mentioning that, they've got 250 plus customers waiting for this, which, builders waiting for this, which is not a small number. I mean, it's a niche market, but that's demand.
I guess so. Like, let's say I wanted to use one of these on a bike.
Mm-hmm.
Do the frame half? What changes are needed to be made?
Nothing.
Like in terms of allowing the brake hose to fit into the down tube, or using like T47 bottom brackets or something to allow the brake hose to fit through and have room to go into the chainstay or anything like that.
I mean, I kind of see that as a stylistic preference of the builder, right? Like, currently you have some builders that want to keep the hoses hidden until the chainstay, and other builders purposefully exit and go around the bottom bracket. And I think that won't change. I think, the only point of contention is how they get that rear brake hose off of the fork steerer. Like, whether they, the angle that they choose to do that at will be interesting, but, and whether they're doing anything to mitigate the risk of the hose rubbing the steerer from there. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, like, there's nothing stopping you from fitting this fork and cockpit to an existing bike.
I guess I'm just thinking, like, most metal bikes, there is a vent hole essentially, like where the down tube is welded into the head tube. But that hole is pretty small usually, but it's also really sharp because you just drill through it.
Yeah.
And like, obviously, like, preventing brake hoses getting cut through is a big thing.
For sure. I mean, there would definitely have to be some provisions made just for the idea that you would have a brake hose running through that area in general. Like same thing with the down tube, head tube junction, that you'd have to make sure that there's no sharp edges there and stuff, because, that hose is going to be moving around in that area quite a bit as you steer. But aside from that, as Dave mentioned, as far as I know, I don't think that there are any real requirements. At least,
I guess it was whether Columbus had like, here's our recommended way of doing this, or it's like, here's a fork.
Yeah,
do what you want.
Yeah, not that I've seen.
I kind of get the impression that it's more the latter.
Yeah,
like here's this thing, you figure it out.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
It's your insurance policy now.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I didn't know, because they also do tube sets, right? Like, I didn't know if they had like, here's this tube set we recommend and this bottom bracket shell or something that makes your life a lot easier to weld it together.
Question. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly heard, like, with Columbus, that they have like recommended orientations with their tubes and that kind of thing, and builders flip them and do all sorts of things. Like they don't have any control over what is done with their product. But yeah, I think they probably do have an idea of how it should be used, and I'm sure that's provided to builders. But I think we'll probably see some pretty big variations over the exact implementation of the system.
For sure. Either way, it does look pretty neat.
Yeah,
it looks tidy. And again, the aesthetic issues aside, with the straight tubes versus slightly curved stem.
Yeah.
It looks promising.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
The other thing is, a lot of these builders are making their own stems these days. So maybe that's the answer to the stem.
True.
Is just weld your own.
Make your own.
Yeah.
Well, and as you said, I mean, Columbus doesn't really limit necessarily what stem. Like, they don't say that you have to use their stem with this thing. So I'd expect there's going to be quite a bit of variation out there.
Yeah. Anyway, it's good to have options, even though it's more options in an area we don't necessarily like. But this will look cool.
It does. It will. All right, well, that'll do it for the news segment of the show. We're actually coming up on the full show time here anyway. Dave, what you got on your mind this week?
I've been shopping for cheap torque wrenches.
Surprise.
So in the US, let's wind back a little bit. A while ago, I bought an Amazon Basics torque wrench because someone asked me what I thought of it, and I didn't know, so I bought one. And then while I was in the US, I went to Harbor Freight, everyone's favorite high-quality tool shop.
Had you been before?
What's that?
Had you ever been before?
Oh, yeah, a few times. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel icky going in there. And then I just so happened, I didn't expect to. I went in with the plan to buy a torque wrench, and they had a sale on. I got this torque wrench for $12.
What a deal.
Yeah. So I've got that. And then I've been looking on Amazon and AliExpress for kind of like the most popular, most commonly bought torque wrenches. And I was actually kind of surprised that the Amazon ones were not as cheap as I had expected, at least the popular ones. So I didn't want to spend $80. So instead I went to AliExpress and I spent $40 Australian for a torque wrench with bits. And now when that arrives, I will test them and compare them to more expensive torque wrenches. and then we will have a feature on whether cheap torque wrenches are a false economy or not.
Would you use the $12 ones on carbon handlebars?
Well,
I guess we're going to find out.
I guess we'll find out. I'm gonna
On your personal bike today, would you use them?
not until I calibrate test them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Better question.
mhm.
Better question. Assuming after you're done testing it, and assuming it actually is calibrated pretty well.
Yeah.
And again, if you go on the assumption that you don't just have a good one and that they're pretty much all that good.
Yeah, that's the problem. Right? You don't know.
True, but I mean, I guess you can say that with anything, right? Like you don't know if a $12 torque wrench is consistent with all the other ones out there, or if a $200 torque wrench is consistent with all the other ones out
But
there.
you
right?
have a better sense that the $200 one is more likely to be more consistent.
You would like to believe it,
Yes.
anyway.
Yes.
But you don't know.
I don't know because I don't. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think I do own more $200 torque wrenches than I own $12 torque wrenches. But yes.
anyway, point being, if that $12 torque wrench ends up being surprisingly good, what do you tell people if they want to buy a torque wrench? Like, do you just tell people like just buy the $12 torque wrench?
I mean, if
it
turns out to be awesome, then yes.
For $12, is this like a beam torque wrench or is this like actual ratcheting?
It's a fully adjustable ratcheting click style torque wrench.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And it's very heavy. And it's actually a design I'd tested years and years ago for Bike Radar, and it didn't fare so well. So let's see how this one goes. But yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'm so eagerly awaiting this one. Should be good. Should be good.
It's a big one. I will say, like, initial impressions are that it'll scratch your paint if you accidentally rub it against a bike.
What else did you buy from Harbor Freight?
That is all.
That is
come
it.
on. There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way you went through Harbor Freight and bought one $12 torque wrench.
Yep.
Sad.
And while I was there, I helped someone, a mechanic, in looking for a socket. I helped them. I provided a service to Harbor Freight. I got them on the right drive size. I was very good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Huh. Well, I'm shocked, Dave. I am absolutely amazed at your level of self-restraint. Although, as you said, you do feel icky going to Harbor Freight, so maybe you felt bad even paying $12 for that thing. Although, I do have that little compact ratchet setup from their kind of higher-end Icon line.
Yeah, you bought
that is
me one
really
of those.
nice.
Yeah, that's great. So anything from like the Icon line is actually very good. And I did consider buying an Icon torque wrench, but they're actually not all that cheap. They're like $180 US, and they're designed to compete against Snap-on. And my experience with that Icon level stuff is actually very good. But yeah, I kind of don't need to prove that to myself. So
fair.
Did you buy any other tools in the US that you can't buy in Australia?
Not so much that I can't buy in Australia, just more that convenience allowed me to. So
Yeah.
I came home with 2 hammers. I arrived in the US with a bottle of whiskey and a lot of chocolate to give out hand out, and my case was 16 kilograms, and when I went home it was 23 kilograms without the bottle of whiskey in it.
Yeah, full of tools.
Yeah,
perfect.
And some scratch stuff.
Yeah, so James did give me like 6 pounds or 8 pounds of scratch stuff that I'd bought. So that was probably the heaviest, most space occupying thing. But yeah, 2 hammers was pretty humorous. So a titanium one from Rollingdale, which is pretty sweet, and a stainless steel one from Abbey Bike Tools, which is sized like their titanium hammer. So it's like a small stainless steel. So yeah, very, very cool little hammers. And a massive torque wrench from Harbor Freight. So
needless to say, you checked that bag.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm sure
Zach,
security did too.
Yeah, I'm sure. What the heck is in this guy's bag? Oh, it's Dave Rome. Zach, do you have anything on your mind this week?
Not really. I mean, just all the cool bikes that you guys saw. That's pretty fun. But otherwise, just been busy working and riding bikes.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Hard to argue with that one.
Yeah.
What did you see any bikes from the coverage that you're like, oh yeah, I'd love to build one, or I'd be keen to? That's something I'd recommend.
I would say because I saw it in person, it's maybe more, I don't know, Like it's different looking at photos on the internet.
Mm.
But Mosaic, they had like an open house the week before, and they have these new paint job with the logos are like splatter paint.
So good.
Oh man, it's so cool. I really want one of those.
Yeah. Yeah, they were exceptionally nice.
And they did a mountain bike fork with the Fox logos matching.
Yep.
Oh man, really good.
Yep.
Very common sentiment.
Yeah. And that Fox Fork, those logos were painted.
Yeah.
Not just take the easy way of getting custom graphics printed.
No, they were like painted on, and you couldn't even feel the difference in this.
Oh my. Definitely putting some clear protective tape over those around here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Eek.
I mean, that stands out, but that's, like I said, because I saw it in person. Like, I think there's a bit of a difference when you can touch it rather than just looking at photos, but they're all really cool.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, it turns out you're not the only one who got some fun new tools recently.
What did you get?
So I fulfilled a decade plus long desire now, because it's been how long has it been now? It's been 17 years. Is that right? No, holy cow. Yeah, it's been 17 years since I've worked in a shop as a shop mechanic full time. And that's basically the last time I have worked on like a proper park shop style steel work stand. It's either like, bolted to the ground or affixed to some huge heavy steel plate. And I've tried nearly every variety of really nice folding stand since then. Like most recently, I had one of those feedback HD stands, which is fantastic.
So overbuilt.
It is
for a folding stand.
It is
It's very heavy.
but I still have always wanted like a park shop stand, and I finally got one.
Hey.
Finally got one.
Nice.
It is extremely heavy because I got the steel plate.
Yep.
I haven't bolted it to my garage floor or anything
You've
yet.
got to bolt it, then you can just like really wail on it.
I probably will at some point once I decide exactly where it's going to go. I'm pretty sure where it's going to go, but like that's pretty permanent.
Yeah. Mine's on a steel plate.
But I have forgotten just how incredibly sturdy it is. Like you said, that feedback HD stand is incredibly overbuilt for a folding stand, but it's still a folding stand.
Yep.
And it doesn't compare to just a huge pile of
Did you go like
steel.
Find a bike that's been sitting in the creek for years and try and get the bottom bracket out? Just like test how solid it is.
No, not yet. I haven't yet. But maybe I should.
Just like test how much force you can put into it.
Oh, that would be a good test.
Yeah.
Because like you definitely can reef on that stand harder than any portable stand, that's for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just like I got it all put together and set up in my garage, and I will admit that I sort of just sat on my little rolling stool and sort of just looked at it for a few minutes. Like, oh man, like I have been looking forward to this day for a very long time.
Yeah.
What head are you going to use?
The same one that you have, Zach, the I can't remember what the part number is, but
not the old school one.
Not the old school one. No, not like the big lever clamp thing.
Yeah.
The
kind of the gentler one.
This topic's interesting because it's one of those things that like everyone that owns a work stand has no idea what you're talking about or what the difference could be because they haven't felt it. So they're just at home really happy with their Aldi stand. This is great. It holds the bike. And it's like, no, you don't. Like the ability to like turn a bike upside down and not have to worry about the stand tipping over is is such a huge benefit. Or the ability to as Zach said, like actually put a load down onto the bike or use a hammer and again not feel the bike like bounce up and down for the next 2 minutes is huge. Like it's just it completely changes the experience of working on a bike to have a stand like this. So I get you, James. I understand why this is exciting.
Oh, it's so exciting. It is like such a luxury that, again, like I have been dreaming of that day for years and years and years.
I have a question for you because I have seen your garage. It's a mess. You say 17 years. In that 17 years, how many times did you trip over the leg of your feedback sports stand?
Almost never, actually. I think probably because it's been set up there for so long that I almost just sort of like intuitively step over it, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
And I also actually have my work stand when I was using tripod stands anyway. I had mine set up so that the straight leg was kind of going out the back, which maybe from a stability standpoint isn't always the best, depending on what you're working on.
Yeah.
It's easier to trip over though when you're like walking around a garage.
Well, I couldn't do that because on the other side of the stand was just always full of crap. So
I see.
that wasn't really a concern.
Yeah, if James
anyway.
ever like dropped a bolt from above the bike,
Oh, dear
it just
God.
like it just so
Disappear
many
forever.
things have to be
It's-
removed from around the stand.
It's definitely happened before, for sure, as you can imagine.
Well, yeah, welcome to the club of single support steel stands.
Oh, so ready. It's so blissful.
Mm.
I love it.
Nice.
Anyway, that was just my little share.
It's exciting.
Dave, let's go ahead and wrap up pretty soon here. Do you have a PSA this week?
Yeah, it was a pretty quick one related to torque wrenches, given those are on my mind. It's a reminder, and this is something that I know most people don't do. Torque wrenches, at least if it's a beam style torque wrench, you don't need to worry about it. But if your torque wrench makes a click when it reaches its set torque, that click happens with a pivot point and with a spring, and all of that stuff freezes up without use and gets stiffer, just like any other, I guess, moving component. So yeah, it's important that you are aware of that. And if you haven't used your torque wrench for a while, even a week or two, or the whole of a winter, it's important that you give it a few clicks at a lower torque before you actually try to use it on a component. So
Interesting.
I would find a bolt that you know is torqued really tight, like a crank bolt or something like that, and set your torque wrench to a lower torque number and just click away on it 5 to 10 times, and then your torque wrench is good.
And when you store your torque wrench, you crank it all the way to the max, right?
All the way to the max, exactly.
All the way.
Yeah.
Ideally past the max.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
past the max.
that'll actually stop you from accidentally over tightening bolts in future with that torque wrench, because it'll always under torque there on.
Perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, always when storing a torque wrench, back it down to the lowest marked number on it, just to take the tension off that spring.
Dave, I'm curious, do you set a calendar reminder on your phone or something like that to go through your 19 torque wrenches and click through all of them?
No, just do it daily. Yeah.
And I wonder why you can't get things done.
Yeah. No, I don't. I mean, I have my torque wrenches that I use regularly, which I don't need to worry about. But then there are some, especially when I'm testing torque wrench and doing calibrating testing on them. I now do a few, a dozen or so clicks to give them a chance to settle in. And yeah, it's quite surprising. I've seen this on a torque test machine where you get a brand new torque wrench and you click it, and at say when you're expecting to see 5 Newton meters, you'll see something like 7 Newton meters or 8 Newton meters. So yeah, and then after 3 or 4 clicks, it settles down pretty quickly down to where you expect it to be. So yeah, this is a PSA for a reason.
All right. That's a good one, Dave.
Yeah.
Well done. All right. Well, that'll wrap it up for this week's show, I think. Thanks as always for listening. We skipped over the big sell where I kind of pitched to people that you should join escapecollected.com. So I guess I'm sort of doing that now. I guess if you're listening to this show, you regularly enjoy Geek Warning, and you're not yet a member of Escape Collective, please just go ahead and head to escapecollective.com/join and consider signing up. A whole bunch of options that you can go through to become a member. Gain access to all of our wonderful content, our Discord channel, stuff like that. But even if you are not a member, if you have no plans to become a member, please at least head over to iTunes, leave us a rating and review, because that does help people find Geek Warning. So that does help us out. So anyway, with that, that'll wrap up. Again, as I said earlier, we should have Ronan back on the show next week, so that'll be nice to have him back. And in the meantime, we'll see you next week. Thanks again for listening.
Yes.